Hey, business storytellers, how's everyone doing? Another live stream here. We are live today on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Amazon Live, and once again back on Facebook. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me why. Love-hate relationship, but Restream offered me to live stream to Facebook again. Maybe I didn't notice it, so I'm doing it. Why not? Another channel. Today, guys, we want to talk about the 5 steps to experts. So Dr. Paul Schempp, I connected with him, I don't know, many, many years ago. I'll just say it. I don't know how long ago it was, but it seems like I've been following him for a long time on Twitter. And so I've been reading his book, and I invited him on the show because I got a bone to pick with him. There's some exercises in here. There's some things in here. And his exercises tell me I'm not an expert. Now I'm running around telling everybody I'm an expert, and he says I'm not. So we'll find out what that's about. But at the end of the day, if you read my content performance culture book, which is still behind me there, way in the back there, you know I love the next play mentality. So here's the thing. Whether his exercise told me I'm not an expert or not makes no difference. I mean, it's good to know, but it makes no difference because I got to get ready, run the next play, become an expert going forward. So let's find out how we're going to get there because Dr. Paul Schempp told me I'm not one. So let's find out what I can do about it. How's it going? Thanks for coming on the show today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Christoph. It's great to finally connect and we can talk person to person here. I'm really looking forward to this. So tell me, why are you not an expert?
Oh, I knew you'd ask me. I didn't have that right page open, but remember I took that. So I took the quiz,
I've
rating your
been very curious
expertise.
because you said a few weeks ago that you had done this and you discovered you weren't an expert, and I've been wondering what it was that you discovered. So please.
So I rank a 21 to 35, which is not horrible. That's
No.
competent. So at the
Hmm.
very least, I'm not a beginner.
Right.
But I don't remember what are the numbers here. It's hard to tell when you look at it what areas you have to improve on. But what I find a lot of times these tests, as much as we don't necessarily like them, they're usually pretty accurate. So I'm not going to challenge the validity, but at the very least, I'm competent. That's above average, and
Mhm.
I can move forward from here. But tell us about what prompted you to write the book, and what's important about being an expert or making your journey to be an expert.
Oh, I'm happy to share that with you. Well, Christoph, much like yourself, I discovered I wasn't an expert either. And in fact, when I first started out as a coach, what I discovered was I was terrible at it. And I didn't want to spend the rest of my life being terrible at what I most love to do. So I thought if I could study these experts, I went back to college, got a PhD, and started doing research to really discover what is it these experts do that I'm not doing, because maybe if I discovered that, I could do that too. So much like you, same boat. And my question was, how do I become an expert? And that's what's led to this book.
So there's also different levels of being an expert, right? So there's first of
Absolutely.
all there's the experts, whatever, and they're kind of out here and sometimes in la la land a little bit, right? Like what's
Right.
next? What could we do, et cetera, et cetera. And experts are really good at doing something. Of course, you can also they're combined, right? So I like to say that I share everything I know. I mean, think about the setup here. I got the iPad, and by the way, guys, quick shout out to switcherstudio.com. That's how I produce the show. Trap One gets you your first month off. But then I also blog about it, and then I also implement it, right? So I'm trying to really do both at the same time. But are you mostly talking about becoming an expert, actually doing the thing, right? Not just talking about it and looking like an expert.
Well, it that you bring up a good perspective there. I look at somebody, for example, like a Stephen Hawking. Didn't actually do things, but he thought. So I would consider him a thought leader. Most people considered Albert Einstein a thought leader. I mean, the only thing he did was move chalk on a board, but he did it in the right way that made some phenomenal discoveries. So I think you're right, Christoph. It could be in both areas, and maybe it could even be in other areas as well. Like, for example, you live in Iowa. There's many people there I would consider to be expert farmers. I mean, the skill, the knowledge, the experience it takes to be a modern day farmer to me is just phenomenal. omelets, he's chef.
It's unbelievable to me, honestly, what goes into farming. And, we do live in a city in Iowa, but my wife kids me sometimes and she says, I think you only married me for my cow meat and pig meat, right? Because every once in a while we we drive up to the locker and, one of the family members took in a cow or a pig or whatever. I don't know how many they bring in. I just
Right.
eat them. So, but tell me about, so sometimes I think when you tell people they should become an expert, they think, "Oh, no, I don't need to be an expert."
Mm-hmm.
But it's important, right, to hone your skill and move it on up, or is it not? And how do we get there?
Yeah, great question. And you're right. We all have different levels of expertise depending on what part of our life we're talking about. I mean, I didn't necessarily think I was an expert parent, but I really wanted to be. I'm not necessarily an expert water polo player, but we have levels of, as you said, of expertise. It's interesting, Christoph, what I find with most, if you will, experts that we study. And by the way, our definition of that is these are people who outperform their peers at the highest level. That's the definition that we use. And it's measured in three ways. And if you look at, for example, your digital marketing expertise, it's your skill, it's your knowledge, and it's your experience. Those three things, the more experience you have, the more likely you're going to be expert. The more skill you have, the more likely you're going to be expert. And the more knowledge you have, the more likely you're going to be an expert. Now, with that said, experience alone doesn't make you an expert. I just noticed you were taking some notes. Take a look at your handwriting. You've been doing that for years. Are you any better at it? No. Experience alone doesn't make an expert, but you can't be an expert without experience.
So, in you guys watching, there is actually a fun little feature here that Dr. Schempp just referred to on Switcher. He can see me when you guys can't see me. So just something. So I keep notes when I'm not on screen in case you guys are wondering. But it's actually a very nice feature because sometimes you can see what's going on, even though when I'm not there. But so I'll show you right here.
There you go.
I've been writing things down for way too long, and I'm not an expert at handwriting. So it's the other thing that I just crossed my mind when you said experience. I've worked with teams who really truly they are good people. I'll put it that way, and they are they can do a lot of things, but their knowledge didn't evolve with some of the strategies, right? So, for example, I once worked with a team, and I don't know how you edited your book, but I'm sure you didn't walk around with a back with checkoff marks on them, right, for people to edit. But I've worked with teams as recently as 5 years ago that still did that. And I couldn't believe it, right? So you always have to bring your knowledge and your skill, I suppose, always bring it up to the next level, nonstop.
Especially for me, what I find with studying these experts, and there's no scientific evidence to support this. It's just an observation on my part. People that have great passion for something, it's the passion that drives somebody for their level of expertise. It's not something you can push somebody to do. You can make them competent, even maybe proficient, and that's what I call the above average people. But to be truly an expert, you have to love what you do. And this is why most people at that expert stratified level never really believe that they're truly expert, because they see there's so much more for me to learn. There's so much better I could be at what I do. And that's what got them to be expert. And Christoph, that's what's going to keep them at that level.
So this is a little bit the imposter syndrome, right? We had Mark Pittman on the show who had the book, what is it called again? The Gift of Doubt, I think. I don't think that's in the carousel currently. But basically, you always think, oh, my goodness, I'm not doing this well. I'm not doing that well. I have to improve on that. And so certainly, I mean, I have that too, just with a good old, what do you call it? Good old sense of anxiety along with it. But, I mean, at the end of the day, you never feel like you're there. And I don't know, maybe that's some of the questions. But how do you move there? I mean, is it so you talk about the skill, the knowledge, and the experience, and like when I think of those things, especially in what I do, I mean, it's just continuously evolves, but how do you start? How do people start? And is it I'll tell you this quick story and then you can answer.
Hmm.
I just read this thing, and it was as an employee, not at Vox Pop Me, but another company on Glassdoor saying the company doesn't invest in employees, and there's no training, and meh, 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 meh. And I get it. Like, yes,
Hmm.
companies should invest in employees, but you know who owns my growth?
Yeah.
I do. If my company doesn't invest, guess what? I'm going to reach out to you and say, hey, I want to talk about this book so I can figure out how I'm going to move up the ladder,
Right.
because I'm only at 35 out of 50 or whatever it was.
Hmm.
So how do people get there? How do they start?
Again, I think it's discovering what you love to do. What's that old saying about if you do every day what you love to do, you never have a day of work. And again, that's what I find with that. So you start with the passion that you have. Now, we don't all have the ability to choose a livelihood that's going to put food on the table, roof over our head, and have complete control over that. But for most of us, yeah, we have some level of control. It was interesting. I speak to a lot of associations and conferences, and one of my favorite was a few years ago. It was the Pizza Expo in Las Vegas. The Las Vegas Convention Center had all of these vendors, suppliers, and they had these pizza competitions. And watching these people with that high level of expertise, many of us think, that's rather frivolous. But no, they took great pride in it. And, when you watch these masters at work, to me, it's spellbinding.
So, it's interesting you say, well, we don't all have control as much as maybe we would like, but there is always some level of control, right? I mean, I'm just thinking about, currently I don't travel much. In fact, I think all of my travel this year might be award tickets, which is really strange. Actually, I think I paid for 2 flights, but we'll see. We'll see how the year ends out up here.
Uh,
Um, but I'm thinking about flight attendants,
mhm.
right? So flight attendants in the big picture of things have very little control over anything, right? They don't control when the plane takes off. They don't have control over whether the plane is in good shape. I mean, there's all kinds of things they don't have control over. They get told when they bring out the water or when they don't. Now United says they have to greet certain United flyers differently again, or I don't know, whatever. But at the end of the day, there's still a lot of things a flight attendant, when they choose to go down that route, that they can control, right? I mean, and make it and become
Absolutely.
an expert.
Absolutely. Can I give you an example? You talk about travel.
Please.
This happened on a Delta Airlines flight, and we were going to, I think it was the Cayman Islands. And there was a flight attendant on that flight who had been flying for over 15 years. And every time they went to Cayman, there was usually a layover there. So she would go to different restaurants and she would write down what her experiences were in those restaurants. She would visit hotels. She would visit other types of things that tourists might be interested in. And she had a one sheet paper that she announced, if you would like this, share it with you. And she became famous. That was her route that she would do. I mean, she went beyond the average, if you will. To me, that represents an expert in her business, because a flight attendant, it's all about customer service, it's about safety, it's about making it a great experience, and I think she did that far beyond what most people would do. So you're right,
And
Christoph. You could be an expert in almost anything.
almost anything. Yeah, it's interesting. I do think sometimes people look for excuses why they can't do it, or
Hmm.
or maybe they don't want to do it. And I do also think some people are scared by the term expert, quite frankly, a
Yeah.
little bit. So everybody wants to do the best possible job
Hmm.
in whatever it is that they're doing. So
Right.
I mean, maybe not in order of importance, but give us some highlights here on what are the steps and how to let's start there.
Sure. We all begin as a novice in whatever we do, whether we're talking about going to kindergarten the first time or we're going first day in a job, we all start as a novice. Now, the thing that will keep you as a novice, and what was interesting, we did this as a study, is how much you believe you know to do your job. Novices rate themselves much higher. We did this with coaches and also business leaders, first-time business leaders. And the novices rated themselves around 8 out of a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being you couldn't learn anymore. You want to guess at what the experts rated themselves?
4.
Very good. 4.5 was the average. Yep. Because they recognized how much there was to learn. And here's the danger, Christoph. When you believe you pretty much know all there is to know about something, you make no effort to learn anymore. And experts are insatiable learners. They're always looking. Like, one of the things that I like about the things that you're talking about with you is that you're always reading things, aren't you? You're always looking for new information. You're always turning over old ideas, finding new ways to use them. That's a characteristic of an expert. If you felt like you had it nailed, you would be doing the same thing 5 years from now that you're doing today. And that's not going to happen, is it, Christoph?
No, what's interesting about that is I think I learn a lot of things, but in my field especially, there is so much new stuff going on all the time. I'll give you an example. 6 years ago, we would not be doing this. What we would be doing is I would interview you, write an article, and then I publish the article, and then we would send it back and forth a couple of times, and depending how nitpicky you are, you would make suggestions or whatever. But today, we still do articles, but we also do a live stream, right? Because I realized that we can reach way more people by doing a live stream. Then we do a podcast, and then we do an article maybe, and then we do this and the other things. And they are slightly different skill sets, like you need a different setup. So, but I'm trying to think back when I first started. And of course, that was a different time, so to speak. But our performance reviews, like, I would rank myself pretty high because I was new, and I didn't know. So how do people realize that they're in that state? Like, how did I know? Is it really just me getting a little older and realizing it and taking a chill pill, or how do I get there?
I think that's part of it. The experience teaches you that there's much more to learn. I also think it's the way you look at failure, Christoph. Experts use failure as fuel to improve. People who are, if you will, average, competent people, they'll generally look to blame something or someone else for their shortcomings. And so it absolves them of any responsibility. And whenever I hear somebody saying, oh, the weather's terrible, or COVID has caused me to go out of business, as soon as you're looking for other reasons that you're not successful, you will never climb that ladder of expertise. Experts look at themselves first, just as you mentioned, and they say, what can I do to be better at this? What can I learn that's going to help me more? What kinds of experiences should I try? I'm going to guess you love talking with other people who do live stream and podcasts, right? Because you want to learn from them. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, I talk to anybody and first of all, because I want to learn. And second of all, it's the only way we get to talk to adults.
Something else that you brought up, that you went from podcast to live streaming because you said everybody's doing a podcast. People weren't doing live stream. Experts are innovators. You will never be a leader in anything by following everybody else. You've got to have the courage, or whatever you want to call it, that's going to make you do something a little bit different that you think, hey, there's some potential here. This may work. You can't be afraid of failing.
Yeah, it's interesting. And also, so I've given up on the whole thing of not afraid of failing, but I don't see very many things as failing anymore. I'll give you an example. I literally earlier today gave a presentation to the sales team, right? Global sales team. And 2 hours after I was done, I found this other thing that could have, should have, would have been in that presentation. I didn't even think about it. You know what I did? I said, hey, guys and gals, I just found this other thing. You might want to consider doing that too. You know, like 15 years ago, I may have been like, oh my God, it's going to look so bad. I didn't know this one thing. but there is so many variables, and then stuff changes. I had a, Amazon Live. Currently, the numbers are a little down for me on Amazon Live. And my wife said, I said to my wife, I said, well, that's not going to work really well on this one project. And she goes, it happens all the time. Stuff changes all the time. People will be like, oh, shoot, bad timing.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it happens all the time. And you just kind of have to roll with it. And as I call it, the next play mentality. Now, let's talk about prioritization. I know you talk about, so first of all, quick question. You have these wonderful worksheets in your book, and I literally wrote in the book, so nobody else is getting it because it's my stuff, even though they can't read it. I mean, they can read the check marks, but so you also have it in Kindle, right? So people can get the Kindle version, just print the worksheets, I suppose.
Right. I believe so. Or they can email me, and I would be happy to do that. And because they heard it on your show, Christoph, I'll supply that for free. Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. But you have some good worksheets in there, and one especially that struck me is, write down the three. It was like something. Write down the 3 skills that would make a big difference in your job,
Mm-hmm.
and so you got to pick. Like, I can't pick everything. I mean, how do you decide those, and how did you come up with that?
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. One of the things I had the privilege of doing, for about 12 years, I was the performance coach for the Swedish Golf Federation, which means I helped design the practice routines, mostly for the elite male golfers in Sweden, PGA and European Tour pros. And one of the things I quickly discovered is they were trying to work on too many skills, which meant they didn't get really good at any of them. So I came up with this idea. Let's say you were one of my players, Christoph. I'd say, Christoph, tell me the one skill that you believe that if we changed it, we improved it, it would make the biggest difference. Now, these are pros in your paycheck at the end of the year. And here's why, because if we concentrated on the most important thing, took care of that, and really got good at it, we're really going to get better. Now, if I said to you, Christoph, I want you to give me the 32 skills that will really help make, you got it. I see you shaking your head. It doesn't work. That's why you really need to know. And sometimes you need a coach. Anders Ericsson, the researcher from Florida State who came up with that 10,000 hours, it wasn't just 10,000 hours to be an expert. It was 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. And if you actually read the study he did, much of it was supervised by a coach, because sometimes we need external information. We need somebody that has a more objective eye than we do to say, nope, just pick the 2 that are going to make the difference. Great point there. Mm-hmm.
Well, so as you were just talking about that, what came to my mind is, I don't know, what am I wearing that a Washington football team had, but Iowa Hawkeyes here last year, the football team, they had virtual workouts, right? So everybody came to practice on their own, and they had a new quarterback. And so the quarterback's coach this year, he goes, I'm so glad we're all back together. And here's the reason why, because we had Zoom meetings, and then everybody went and did their own thing, but I couldn't coach them.
Right.
So if they taught themselves the wrong step or wrong whatever, then I saw them in August, and guess what? They've been doing that stupid wrong thing for months, and I don't know anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
How do we people?
Right? Yeah.
What?
They were doing it with the best intentions to try to improve, to contribute to the team, but they just needed that, if you will, that coach. I'm sorry, you're going to ask a question?
So how do we find these coaches? Who's going to help us? Is that just like, our team members, or how do we do that?
Great question. One of the things that we discovered about people who are true experts in their field, most of them had between 3 and 5 mentors. And what was also interesting, had no idea they had the impact they did on that particular person. And so if I would suggest anybody can benefit from a mentor, it doesn't matter how old you are. Definition of a mentor is somebody that has more experience in what you do. I mean, Christoph, I think about, like, for example, my phone. All right. I have limited abilities with technology, But I have a doctoral student, Marcus Dexter, who is, I mean, this man lives for technology. So I'll say, Dex, I heard about this iPhone and teach me how to use it. I mean, he mentors me in technology, and he's probably like half my age. And so we can all benefit from mentors.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a question how you find them, especially right now, because, we're all at home. And
Yeah.
I was kind of joking earlier, like this is the only time I get to talk to people outside of a Zoom meeting. And I don't have that many Zoom meetings, quite frankly. So we have to, but it's easier than ever to connect with people. I mean, Content Marketing Institute has a mentoring program. Others have mentoring programs. I think even LinkedIn, you can do it. So definitely worthwhile. And plus now you can just read people's books and you can connect with them on social media, which back in the day, I don't know, where are you based? Back in the day, we wouldn't have connected, I'm guessing.
Athens, Georgia.
I mean, so probably not, right? I haven't made my way down there in I don't know, a couple of years.
No. Athens is one of the places you have to be going there to get there. Nobody shows up by accident. It's kind of like Waterloo, Iowa.
Marion, Iowa. Nobody really comes here unless they're visiting me, and I don't know why they would come and visit me. All right, awesome. What else about becoming an expert? Any final parting tips you have that people really should take to heart? Or
one thing that we're kind of discovering is the power of intuition. Can I just mention that briefly? Oftentimes we believe that we have to think logically about everything, that we need all the data, we need all the information, we have to process it, and we're going to come up with the right answer. And that's important. It's critically important that we do that. But what we find with experts is they look at the world a little bit differently, and they actually look for patterns. Analytic thinking requires data points. Patterns means that you see something. And they're able to perceive those patterns and know if something's, if you will, together or something's coming apart. And they have an intuitive feeling about it. And what we've discovered is that intuitive feeling is actually more powerful than the logic. Now, what's critical there is two things. One is you have to have extensive knowledge of the people or the event, and you have to have extensive knowledge and experience in the environment. It takes those two things. So, for example, if you and I knew each other really, really well, Christoph, for years, and I walked into a store and I thought, your birthday's coming up. Christoph would love this coffee cup. You never mentioned you want this coffee cup, but I know this is what you like. How do I know that? Intuition. I've seen you in the environment, in the experience. I buy that and you say to me, Paul, how did you know? That's exactly what I've wanted all my life. So we need to trust the intuition when it comes, but support it with the analytic thinking too.
I'm chuckling a little bit inside because I don't think anybody has gotten me any gift I actually wanted in 30 years. But the reason is because if I want that hat, this one right here, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to order it. If I want to, you know what I mean? If I want something new, I'll just get it. Like people usually don't have a chance to actually buy it for me as a gift because, so I'm chuckling, but I get the point. Intuition is interesting. And I actually think, I don't remember who said this. It may have been on the Real Talk, the Customer Insights show with Jen Vogel, where they talked about, I don't remember who said it, but you have to use your intuition and you have to use the data and you have to figure out what you can't just do one or the other.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
But if you only do one, it doesn't always help. I mean, you're in marketing. I mean, think about it. The greatest marketing campaigns on a logical level, oftentimes they would have used, but there was something there. Okay, you could probably think of a story, a narrative, an example of that, right?
Don't get me started on weirdness in marketing. We had one today. I'm not sure I'm supposed to share that one quite yet. But the one that comes to my mind, remember this? So Colin Kaepernick had the Nike commercial. And all the coverage that Nike got, the coverage in the media was horrible, right? Everybody was beating up on Nike. And so I looked. So Nike, Adidas, Reebok, I don't know if Under Armour was in there or not. But their search traffic was pretty similar. It's usually pretty similar. And when the commercial hit, you know what happened to Nike? It went like this.
Yep.
So search traffic went way up. So it's a success just from that.
Yep.
And then later, Nike released their quarterly numbers, whatever it's called. And they made a boatload of money off that campaign.
Wow.
So the point is, even though all these media people I am a journalist by heart. I'm still a journalistic storyteller. Mm-hmm. So I'm the last person to bash any media of any kind, sure. Quite frankly. Mm-hmm. But interestingly, it worked. Mm-hmm. And nobody said anything good about it.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to take the data, you have to take your intuition, you have to push forward. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. And again, with experts, and you mentioned this, Christoph, they use both. They use both. And what I find with people who are competent generally will only pull the trigger when all of the ducks line up, when all of the data makes sense, and they get, if you will, a fairly average, sometimes above average performance.
Fantastic discussion, guys. I do recommend the book, 5 Steps to Expert. My playback is 30 seconds delayed, so I just watched myself telling that Nike story, and I looked like I was getting into it. So my apologies for being overly animated, but anyway, this is a good book. Really recommend you get it. You can get it on Amazon. If you're watching on Amazon, it is in the carousel. I do have it linked in all the other channels. So there you go. Dr. Schempp, thanks for making your time. I think you're traveling, right? So thanks for making the time while you're on the road.
Yeah, I'm in Columbus, Ohio right now. I'm speaking to a business group here tomorrow morning. So and then I head back to Atlanta. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. I was in Columbus a few years ago, and I was on American Airlines flight AA 1492.
Really? Wow.
And I was like, this is actually very, how subtle, right? Uh-huh. So, but anyway, Columbus, of course, came to now the United States in 1492. But it's just, and I think they did something, I think Delta did something like that too. Maybe they had a Delta flight 1776 going into Philadelphia on Independence Day. So it's creative and subtle. Thank you for making the time. Really appreciate you fitting me in.
Christoph, vielen Dank für alles.
Bitteschön. War schön, Sie hier zu haben. If you guys don't know German, I grew up in Germany, Dr. Schempp, lived in Germany. So every once in a while, funny quick story before I let you go. I did do a keynote in German once in Germany, but it was remote. It was last year. I published it as a podcast episode, and people listened to it. I don't know who, but people did. So there we go. Vielen Dank nochmals. Bis zum nächsten Mal und viel Spaß morgen früh.
Bis bald.